Hi, my name is Juan. I am just one reader. Very recently, I posted a video talking about the best and worst books that I have read so far in 2018, and now I am going to do the same thing but with movies because I also love going to the movies. I try to go and watch every single movie that is released here in Mexico. I pretty much spent my weekends at the movie theater. Hashtag not a social life person. But yeah, I do spend a lot of my free time at the movies, and so I figured I need to talk about some of the best movies and also some of the worst and most disappointing films that I have seen so far this year. Now, some of these movies were released in the US in 2017, but they were released here in Mexico in 2018. So I'm just saying that in case you see me talking about a movie that was not actually made and released in the US in 2018, but in 2017. So these are movies that I watched in 2018 so far, and some of them I have enjoyed very much, most of them, and some of them have been just very bad. So I'm gonna start with the worst movies that I have seen in 2018, and I only have 3 of them. So firstly, I just have to get this one right out of the way, and I'm sorry, but Ready Player One, how could people like this movie? No, actually, I do get why people would like this movie and why they did like this movie a lot. I was loving the movie. I mean, I thought the first 20 minutes were amazing, and I was completely in it and completely immersed, and I remembered reading the book, and the book was very bad. It was very disappointing. And the movie was just wonderful, but then it just went down, and it was a sunken ship. It was a disaster. I just found it very poorly directed and written and acted, and I'm sorry, I know that a lot of people are going to disagree very strongly on this with me, but I thought it was really bad. Another truly awful movie was based on a true story by Roman Polanski. This was a movie in French, D'après une histoire vraie, by Roman Polanski. It sounded great on paper, a really great premise, and this is the only movie in 2018 that I have walked out of. It was so incredibly preposterous. It was awful. It was terrible. It was so contrived and so cheesy and so unoriginal and just stupid. It's an awful movie. Just the worst. And finally, another movie that I found just incredibly bad and sentimental and awful was La Promesse de l'Aube, which I guess would translate as to something like The Promise of Dawn. This was kind of a weird World War II epic story, but also the story of this very tormented man who is tormented by his own mother, who is this caricature character. This was just one of those movies that people are going to love because people are stupid and because people can be wrong and people consume things that are stupid and sentimental, and just because they are sentimental they will like them. And sure enough, I was wanting to tear my eyes out of my head the entire movie, which by the way is like 2.5 hours. Sure enough, when I was exiting the movie theater, I just heard people all around me just talking about how much they loved the movie and how amazing it was and oh, how touching. Horseshit. Okay, now that I've gotten all that negativity out of my system, let's talk about the great movies that have been released in 2018 and that I've had the big pleasure and fortune to experience. And what better way to start than with Isle of Dogs, probably my favorite movie of the year so far. Isle of Dogs by Wes Anderson was a very anticipated movie by me and by a lot of people. It did not disappoint. Actually, it did disappoint a lot of people. A lot of film critics that I follow on social media claimed it to be not as touching or heartfelt or emotionally important. They didn't feel very invested emotionally in the movie. And okay, I get that criticism, but this was an experience. The minute that I sat on that movie theater, it just it was a truly cinematic experience. I'm actually at a loss for words because I had the most amazing time. I laughed consistently like a mad person. I smiled with pure joy and delight, and I was astonished just by the sheer visual greatness of everything that I was looking at. It was just incredible, and actually I was very touched by this movie. I found it incredibly emotional and sad and politically relevant, thematically very relevant in general, it's just a fascinating experience. So I Love Dogs, absolutely wonderful in my opinion. Another hugely anticipated movie and a movie that everybody is talking about is Hereditary. I loved this movie. This was another really cinematic experience that I had this year. I found it very, very unnerving and not really terrifying, but very unsettling and disturbing. And it's a movie that kind of crept under my skin in a very unusual way. It's a movie that I still find myself thinking about sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night and I want to go to the bathroom or I want to go get a glass of water and I have to go downstairs. Some parts of this images and feelings from this movie kind of come back to me all of a sudden, and I feel actually disturbed. And that's wonderful. That's kind of a long-lasting effect that this movie has had on me, and I really thank it for that, for tormenting me. Yeah, the ending is kind of silly. It's kind of over the top. It kind of went in the wrong direction at the end, but I still liked it. The music and the cinematography and the acting and the direction. This movie is just amazing. Love, Simon was a movie that I found completely charming and very, very heartfelt, very emotional. It was a joyful experience. I found myself smiling the entire movie. Actually, when I walked out of the theater, my cheekbones were hurting like hell. I was just happy with this movie, and I feel like this movie did something very right. It did something that many movies in the same young adult genre do, but with a twist, with a different lens, through a different lens, with a different direction and with a different understanding of characters and what these people go through and what real people go through as well. I thought it was a much better achievement than the book. I think the book by Becky Albertalli was very lackluster and kind of very forgettable, but the movie I think was really great, and it reminded me a lot of John Hughes' style, like the Breakfast Club and stuff like that. It was just wonderful, and yes, there were some times that the movie goes in a kind of cheesy, melodramatic direction and follows some young adult tropes, but it didn't really take away any of the wonderful warmth and any of the heart and the real value that this movie has for me. So absolutely loved Love, Simon. Another movie that captivated me from beginning to end was A Fantastic Woman by Sebastián Lelio, who is a director from Chile. This movie is in Spanish, Una Mujer Fantástica, and it actually won the Oscar for Best Foreign Picture in the last Oscars. I thought this was just one of the best movies of the year. I mean, I would have put it right there at the very, very top alongside Three Billboards and Phantom Thread. Yeah, this was just one of those kind of wow movies. The cinematography, the direction, the acting, and it's just a wonderfully well-written movie, and it has a lot of heart. It kind of includes some magical realism moments in it to kind of play with the storytelling. I just found this movie absolutely compelling, riveting, and emotionally draining, but really important. It's just a brilliant movie. Another wonderful piece of filmmaking that actually was just released this weekend, and I just watched it like a couple of days ago, was Disobedience, starring Rachel McAdams and Rachel Weisz, which you can see kissing in this cover, in this poster. And this was actually also directed by Sebastián Lelio, the director from A Fantastic Woman, which I just mentioned. And I didn't know that. And I was watching this movie, Disobedience, and all the time while I was watching it, I was just saying, wow, this direction is wonderful, and the movement of the camera, and it's very reminiscent of something. I don't know what it reminds me of, but it's so familiar and it's just wonderful. It's a style that I like very much. And of course, when I saw the credits, I was like, oh, Sebastián Lelio does it again. He nails it. He's killing it. This is a wonderful movie. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I think I prefer A Fantastic Woman right now because, well, actually, I don't know. I think I need to wait. I need to wait a little bit to actually say which one I prefer. But Disobedience is a wonderful movie. It's about this Jewish community, very Orthodox Jewish community in England, and Rachel Weisz's character sort of rebelled and got out from this community, but then she has to come back. And it's a very complex story. But what I loved the most about it, I already mentioned the direction, the writing, the acting is absolutely on point, very nuanced acting, the directing, the cinematography, everything. But what I loved the most is the way that this story handles the characters in a way that they are not easy to villainize or victimize. These are characters that are just real, and you don't necessarily feel bad for them, but you also don't actually root for them. These are just people, and you are like following them and making your own judgments and making your own like discussions, I guess. So yeah, if you haven't had the chance to check this one out, please go ahead and do that. How could I make a list of my favorite movies of the year so far and not include Incredibles 2? This was the perfect sequel. It's not a perfect movie. It has some trouble with its villain and the way that the villain is incredibly obvious and predictable from the very beginning, and it's just so obvious that that's what's gonna happen. Sure, but other than that, it's a perfect sequel. It's such a great movie. The characterization, the themes that it explores, and the way that it addresses those topics. I love the twist that they did with gender roles and with this kind of exploration of the media and how Elastigirl has this new kind of job that has to do with the media and with the perceived image of what a superhero is supposed to be like. I loved the characters. There were a lot of funny moments, and it was just a movie that was 100% fun and wonderful. This video is already way too long, so I'm going to try to be very brief with the next movies. So Lovelace was a Russian movie that came out last year, but it didn't reach Mexico until 2018, and it was a master class in the kind of filmmaking that I enjoy. It was very difficult to watch. It's a very difficult to stomach kind of movie. It is relentless and vicious. It's about bad people, unlikable characters. It's about this family that is broken and falling apart and going to hell, really. It's about this family. The parents are getting divorced. They have a small son. One day the son goes missing, and the parents are so narcissistic and self-involved that they don't even realize that the kid is missing until days later, and they start looking for him, and that's the story of the movie. It's tragic, it's relentless, it's vicious, and it's a master class in the kind of thing that I like. It is a very important movie, very somber, but really great. Another movie that I found pretty much perfect in every possible way was Annihilation by Alex Garland. This was adapted from the novel of the same title by Jeff Vandermeer, which I also really enjoy. And I think this is one of the rare cases in which you have a book-to-movie adaptation in which both are very different. The book and the movie are very different, but they all do great things with their own media. Another example would be American Psycho, the novel by Bret Easton Ellis. Amazing novel. As a novel, it does what a novel does wonderfully well. It excels on its literary merit. But the movie with Christian Bale is just a wonderful movie, and it's very different. And it takes its liberties with the material, but it's just wonderful. Another one would be Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. Another one would be this one, Annihilation by Alex Garland, who is a wonderful director. He previously did Ex Machina, but I think I like Annihilation just a little bit more. I thought this movie was terrifying. I was having nightmares for a fucking week. This is exactly the kind of thing that makes me absolutely wet my pants. Yes, this is the kind of thing that is just, I find so incredibly mystifying and the unknown, I guess. I mean, the unknown. If you are familiar with psychoanalysis or with Freud at all, you might have heard of a concept that he calls the sinister or the uncanny. And I think this movie and the book as well are clear examples of that, of the uncanny, the unknown, the sinister, the ominous, the dreadful. And visually, on a technical level, it's an amazing movie. It's a gorgeous movie, and I am very, very sad that we did not get to see it on theaters here in Mexico. But still, it's a wonderful and very, very clever movie. Faces, Places was a wonderful documentary in French, Visage Village. It features these two artists, the photographer Gia, or JR, or however way you want to say it, and the filmmaker Agnès Varda, as they go on this trip around France. And they go to these little towns and villages in France, and they start taking pictures in this truck of the people that live in these places. And then they print those photographs and they kind of paste them on the buildings and on the houses and on different structures. And it's a wonderful documentary about art, about people, about resignifying a place. And yeah, it's a wonderful documentary. It's really warm, and you really feel for these people, the people in the towns, but also for the two protagonists and the journey that they embark upon together. It's a wonderful documentary. It was nominated for Best Documentary at the Oscars, but sadly it did not win. Another movie that you absolutely have to go and see if you have the opportunity of catching it, because it's not available everywhere, but if you can get it, please go ahead and see it, is The Cake Maker. This movie takes place in both Berlin and Israel. I think it's Jerusalem or some city in Israel. And it is just so wonderful. It's a wonderful movie. I was not expecting it to be as great as it was. It's about this protagonist who is a cake maker living in Berlin, and one day he starts having an affair with this Israeli man. He is an Orthodox Jewish man, and they start having an affair, and it turns out this other Jewish man is married and has a wife and a son two children or just one son. I don't remember. And then something awful happens that this man dies. And so the protagonist, our cake maker, goes to Jerusalem and starts slowly making his way into his lover's his late lover's life, and he starts getting involved with his wife and his son, and it's very interesting. It's a very interesting movie. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil anything else. Please go ahead and watch it if you get the chance. Yep, I loved A Quiet Place. It was a very fun experiment. It was a great concept, a really great premise. Even though I did not really love the direction that they took at the ending with, showing the monsters so much and having that kind of ridiculous ending. But I still very much enjoyed it, and I more than anything else, I really loved the experience of going to a theater at 11 in the morning and being the only person in the movie theater. That is an experience. Another great example of a book to movie adaptation is Lady Macbeth. It's based on a novella by a Russian writer, a classical Russian novella by Nikolai Leskov, which is actually a very, very fine novella. I really, really loved it. And the movie takes it and it kind of changes some things. So it becomes kind of its own thing. But it's also a great movie. It's its own thing, but it's great. So I would highly recommend, if you enjoy reading, I would highly recommend the novella. And yeah, it's a really great movie with wonderful acting and cinematography and a very vicious story. Well, I never thought I'd be saying this at age 26, but Paddington 2 is a perfect movie. I gave it like 100 out of 100. I could not love this bear and these characters and this world and this storytelling more. It's the best. It's a nice story about good people, decent people. It's just such a wholesome thing. I just love it. I love Paddington. I love him. And it's just an incredible movie. It's just an incredible movie. And the last movie that I want to mention in today's wrap-up is The Florida Project. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Of course, I say that as a figure of speech. This movie, this is kind of similar to Lovelace. They are both very difficult movies to watch. Lovelace more so because it's about truly unlikable people doing bad things and being neglectful and just being horrible and narcissistic. And in the Florida Project, we also get a little bit of something similar. Not the same, but something similar. We get these parents, particularly this mother, who is pretty much the most unlikable mother character that you will ever see. She is neglectful. She is not fit for what she is supposed to be doing, taking care of her child. She is the worst mother you've ever encountered, and yet you always root for her and for her child. You are always on their side. You kind of love them as well as hate them. And that's something that really, really took me by surprise when I was watching this movie. I was surprised about how this character, particularly the mother, but also the child, they are so annoying and so horrible and so bad. They're so awful, but they are a product of a lot of different things. They are not bad because they're bad. They're not. She's not a neglectful, terrible mother because she is and because she wants to be. She is in a very difficult situation, and you hate her, but you also feel for her. And yeah, you're just very ambivalent about her and about the entire movie. I also really loved the visual storytelling in this movie. I think it was brilliantly directed, and the way that the director, uses the colors and the settings, and the I hate this word, but the juxtaposition of this wonderful magical kingdom at Disney World, in contrast with this very downtrodden, very shitty places, these motels. Now, I do want to talk about the ending, because the ending is kind of, it's a point for debate. A lot of people have a lot of problems with the ending, but I kind of love it. I kind of love it. I'm not going to spoil it, but I think the ending, the last 15 seconds of the movie, are probably the most painful and the most harrowing and the most devastating, because basically what the director is trying to do, I interpret, is showing us the breakdown of a human mind, of a child's mind, and showing us the complete dissociation of the experience that she's living, which is something that is kind of present throughout the movie, now that I think of it. This child, the protagonist, is a child, a very small child. She is forced to dissociate her world because her life is just very difficult and very it's just very hard, and it's very precarious. And so she is forced to have this defense mechanism, and you can see this in how the movie is visually constructed, how we have this kind of magical feeling, ethereal quality in some of the places and in some of the shots. So yeah, that was the Florida Project. Cannot miss it. Whew, now that's a wrap up. That's a long video. I don't know who has watched this till the very end, but if you're still out there, thank you and congratulations for sticking out with me. Now, I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. What are some of your favorite and least favorite movies of the year so far? I would really like to have a conversation about this. I know that a lot of people are going to give me hell for hating Ready Player One. I'm just thinking about that. But yeah, I'm just one reader, and I will see you next time.